It is recommended that you create a dedicated connection pool for initialization blocks. This connection pool should not be used for any other queries. Additionally, it is also recommended that you isolate the connection pools for different types of initialization blocks. This also makes sure that the authentication and login specific initialization blocks do not slow down the login process. Initialization blocks should be designed so that the maximum number of Oracle BI server variables may be assigned by each block. For example, if you have 5 variables, it is more efficient and less resource intensive to construct a single initialization block containing all 5 variables. When using one initialization block, the values will be resolved with one call to the back-end tables using the initialization string. Constructing 5 initialization blocks, one for each variable, would result in 5 calls to the back-end tables for assignment. Now that we understand the importance of avoiding resource usage efficiency, we need to create a dedicated connection pool for use with all our initialization blocks. In the physical layer of the administration pool, we'll right-click on the database and choose New Object, and then we'll choose Connection Pool. Once the Connection Pool window comes up, we will enter init block, shortcut for initialization block, and the Oracle core interface will be left at the default 10G, 11G, and then the data source name will be the database which is installed, which is ORCL, and then the administrative user will be Paint, and the password as usual is admin123 with the first letter being uppercase, and we will go ahead and click OK so that we can be prompted to confirm the password, which is again admin123. We click OK. That creates a new connection pool which we've named init block. On the tools menu bar, we'll click Manage, Variables, and once the variable manager window comes up, we'll go ahead and click Action, New, Repository, Variable. This time we want to name the dynamic variable current month. Go ahead and type current month in the name box, and then choose dynamic for the variable type. Under initialization block, click New. This window shows you how to create an initialization block in the repository variable. So we will go ahead and name it current. Then click on Edit Data Source. On the Edit Data Source section, in the new window, click on the Use Database Specific SQL. Then you select Default. In the white space, we will type an SQL. Select Calendar Month Description from the Time Dimension table. And then we will add a condition below that where we want to truncate the correct month, date is equal to truncate sys date minus, let's just say 250. Let's see what it gives us. And then we'll click on Browse, and in the new window we'll pick the initialization block as the connection pool, and then we'll click on Select, and you'll notice that the connection pool type has been populated here. Click OK. In the variable target section, we'll click on the edit target. In the new window, we'll click on current month, and then we'll click OK. And then we'll go ahead and click the test button at the bottom to see if this produces any results. The result set is empty. One of the possible reasons will be that the SQL was typed incorrectly. So let's check and make sure that we've typed in all the values in the SQL correctly. The first thing that we want to do is to review the SQL. So I will test it here before we go again to the repository variable initialization block. See, the result set is empty, and I'm just using this number so that the correct date can match the system date, and that is based on the fact that we're using old data. We do not have current data for this lab, so I will change this number to 2800, and let's see what it gives us. Well, it's given us October 8th, which is not correct. What about if we do 2900? That looks like it's the most current date, which matches with what my system date is. So we'll click close, and then we'll click OK, and then we'll go ahead and test the result set. So the current month is June 2008. Of course, again, 2008 is the most recent data that we have in the database, and we are only interested in the month at this point just for the demonstration purposes. So go ahead and click close. We'll close the initialization block by clicking OK, and then you will notice that we first created the current year for the static variable, and then the dynamic variable we created current month, and then finally we created an initialization block called current month block. So we'll also close this window and then save the repository. And you wish to check global consistency. Yes, we wish to check global consistency, and we want to make sure that there are no errors before we proceed. Consistency check didn't find any errors, warnings, or best practice violations. We'll click OK, and that's what we want to see before we move on to the next part of this lab. Next, we need to log on to the Enterprise Manager and deploy the RPD with the newly saved changes. Go ahead and open your Firefox. My session has expired because I've been idle for some time, so I'll go ahead and log in again. Logging in successful, loading target. Then we'll click on Business Intelligence, Core Application. This will take a few moments. On the new window, click Deployment, then Repository. Then we want to log and edit configuration. Log and edit configuration completed successfully. You click Close. Want to browse. Then we pick the pen.rpd. Open. Then we type the password, which again is admin123 with the first letter uppercase. Click Apply, and then Activate Changes. This also takes a few moments. Activate Changes in Progress. Once this has been completed successfully, then we'll go ahead and click Close and restart to apply recent changes. Then we want to restart the entire servers. Are you sure you want to restart OBIEE components? Yes. And this also takes a few moments. Restart all completed successfully. We'll click Close. Then we can open a new tab and then return to Fusion Middleware Control and log into the Business Intelligence Analytics. So we will bring up the BI window, login. And what we want to do now is to test our work and see if we can use any one of those variables that we've created. So click on Home. Next, we want to click on Analysis, then choose the subject area paint. Then from the timetable, we want to pick calendar month description. So click on calendar month description, double click on it to bring it over to the selected columns. From the fact table, we want to pick dollars. Double click on it or drag it over to the selected columns. Then we want to add a filter on the calendar month description column. Click on filter. Under value in the new filter window, we'll click on add more options and then pick repository variable. We'll enter the repository variable name that we created area. In this case, we'll type in current month. Recall this was dynamic repository which created not too long ago, and then we'll click OK. And then we want to run and check the results. Notice that the results have been filtered by June, and it's showing us the dollars that are specific to June. The beauty of using dynamic variables is that as each month goes by, so will the repository variable switch the month based on the SQL that created, which looks at the system date. So there's no need to manually go into the Oracle BI administration tool and change the month in there. And that's the reason why they're called dynamic, because they change automatically by themselves based on the events which take place on your system. Now let us go back to the criteria, and we want to clear all the selected columns. So double click the two X's at the far end of the selected columns pane. Next, we want to use the static variable that we created in the repository. So from the timetable, we want to pick grade year, and then from the fact table, we want to pick dollars, and then we want to place a filter on the grade year, and then on add more options, we want to select the repository variable. Then we want to enter current year. If you recall, this was the name of the static variable created, and you click OK. And then we want to remove the current month variable, which was for the previous query that we had created, but I forgot to clear it here, so we'll remove it at this point, so that we only remain with one entry for current year. Then we'll click on results. You will also notice that we entered 2008 in the repository for the static repository variable, and that is the reason why we're only seeing result sets for 2008. This again, it's a little bit like hard coding the value 2008 rather than looking at the system date, and is not very much recommended in a very resource intensive environment, because you may create so many reports and forget to change the dates once the year flips over to the following year, or if you wanted to run your reports for some previous period. However, this demonstrates how to use a static repository variable. If we wanted to assign a name or change the name of the initialization block and also set a schedule for the initialization block, all we needed to do was to go back to the administration tool, manage variables, and under the repository we want to open the initialization block. We want to double click on it, and you can change the name here, and then you can also set the schedule at which the initialization blocks runs. So June 8th is today's date, and we want it to refresh every interval of 1 hour. If you want it, you can change it to minutes or days depending on your data needs. So this is also how data is pulled based on your initialization block from the database. As it's refreshed, you also bring in those values using these intervals that you set in the initialization block. That is all about variables, static and dynamic variables. Of course, this only demonstrates the fundamentals of how to create dynamic and static variables in the repository, and we will show you how to perform additional tasks as we go along in these lessons. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to showing you the next parts of this course.